Okay, so the second part of my talk is about the British IndoPak Army and Scotland's connection with Force K6. So what I'll cover in this talk is the British IndoPak Army and its contribution to both the world wars, and of course, who were Force K6 and their connection with Scotland. And of course, you can ask any questions in the chat box and we'll cover them later at the end. We can have a discussion later on. Okay, so this is a slide from, this is a bar graph actually that we actually had on display at the Glaswegian Asians exhibition. And it shows India's contribution. When I say India, we're talking about Pakistan, Bangladesh, India together. This is pre-partition. So it's the contribution towards World War I and World War II in terms of the number of servicemen and women, the amount of money, and how many people passed away. So you can see from this that over 4 million in total took part in World War I and World War II. And this is from various faiths. This is including sort of Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Christians, Gurkhas, and any other, and people of no faith as well. And so over 161,000 in total died over both. You can see the figures separately by looking at, by seeing them in the slides, but in total it was over 161,000 that died and 250,000 that were injured. And you can see that there's a whole range of various ethnic groups and faiths. But what's really interesting is, and a lot of people don't realize this, and I didn't realize until I started doing this work, was that it was actually India itself that contributed a lot of money and resource towards fighting for this fight, for Britain in both the wars. It wasn't the other way around. So they put in a lot of resources and a lot of money, and I've kind of just highlighted rough figures here. So we're talking like 479 million in those days in sort of 1914, and 1.3 billion by the time it gets to World War II. And then also what that means in today's money, 25 billion and 53 billion. And you can see that there's a lot of people have died, become injured, but we've also managed to get, many of the soldiers were awarded Victoria Crosses. Now, Victoria Cross is something that is awarded for extreme valor and extreme bravery. It's not, so to give you an example, from 4 million people, only 39 of these crosses were awarded, which is actually still a huge number. But it just goes to show you that over both the wars, there was 39 in total. Now, my next picture is something which I managed to find in a photo album of somebody in Glasgow. So I'll just go through what this picture shows. So on the left-hand side, we have somebody called Gyan Singh, who was captured. He captured a Japanese anti-tank gun and gifted it to Pakistan, believe it or not. And his son actually to this day still lives in Glasgow. So it was in his family album. So he was awarded a Victoria Cross for bravery. You can probably just about see that on his pocket there. And he fought in World War II. And then he's standing next to this really sort of very serious looking gentleman. His name was Khudadad Khan. Now he's somebody that was awarded the Victoria Cross, and you can see it's on his lapel there, in World War I. So both of them, there's quite an age difference. And every 2 years, and this was an award that was given to people, they would have to either come to Britain, and they were given this award by this medal by King George himself. And every 2 years after they received the medal, they would be invited back to Buckingham Palace for a reunion. So them and others that were given the Victoria Cross would be invited. So this is a picture outside Buckingham Palace in 1956. So Khudadad Khan was the first South Asian soldier ever to be awarded a Victoria Cross in World War I. And like I said, in total there was 39. So now to talk to you about the connection of Force K6 and who they were and how they're related, how they're important in Scottish history. Force K6 were an all-Muslim regiment from the Pakistan side of pre-partition India. And they were made up of approximately 1,800 personnel and 2,000 mules. And they were a mule transport regiment. So that means that they were asked by the British Armed Forces to help support them within the trenches in France. So many of them traveled by boat from 1939 to France. And this was because mechanized jeeps were unable to get to the front line. So by having these carts that were attached to mules, they were able to get them goods and supplies to the front line fighters and soldiers. So they came to France, and from France they were evacuated. Eventually, many of them were evacuated from Dunkirk, believe it or not, and came to Britain towards Cornwall. And when they escaped from Dunkirk, they came to Cornwall, and then from Cornwall they came to Scotland for Operation Jupiter, which was to try and do mountain warfare training. The Operation Jupiter was something that didn't actually go ahead, but it was for the preparation of possible invasion of Norway. So you can see that this group of soldiers had come to France, and from the 4 companies that were sent, 3 of them escaped, and 2 of them from Dunkirk. 1 of them was captured as prisoner of war. And in fact, the ones that were captured as prisoner of war, their sergeant in charge, his son still lives in Scotland, and he also has some information about them too. He's got a letter, he's got escape instructions, he's got testimony from his father. So there's quite a big story in there. So many of them came to Dalwhinnie Station in Scotland, and then from there they travelled into Canusie, and from Canusie they went to their different camps. So this is a really nice picture that shows the soldiers in the Highlands in Aviemore in round about 1942, and you can see the kind of outfits that they've got. They've got their buggeries, they've got their traditional uniforms, they're sort of you can see the animals in the background as well, and you can obviously see the Scottish landscape. This is a picture from the Imperial War Museum. So a couple of other pictures that have been sent in from people up north in Ballater. You can see there's one of the soldiers with some refugee children that came from the island of Guernsey, during World War II. And there's a little toy soldier that he's holding, a little toy horse, that he's holding in his hand. So very often the soldiers would be invited over to various houses to come and spend time with them, because they were here for so long. They were here for over a year. And they made very good local friends, local connections. This is another picture of soldiers in Golspie, which is further up from Inverness. And you can see this is in King George V Park. I think Duke of Sutherland is inspecting them all. So there's quite a few of them here. And this is a picture of them in Laird with their animals. So they came to Scotland. There was about 1,800 of them, just about 1,700 of them at the time. And they were stationed in various areas all around Scotland, not just in one place. So they made quite a big impact up north, and it's quite a highly sort of unsuspecting location, you would imagine, for the Highlands to have this. But of course, many of them obviously survived and went back, eventually were returned back to India before partition. But some of them unfortunately passed away. And we know that 13 of them died in Scotland, and 9 of them are actually buried within Canusie Cemetery. So this is an image of Canusie Cemetery on a very nice day. You can see the front 2 rows, and then one of the graves is on the 3rd row, just there where I'm circling. So they've got 9 soldiers that are buried there. The rest of them were sent back about 1944. So they died from various reasons, such as various illnesses or various accidents. In fact, one of them passed away on one of the hills here whilst during training in the Glenfeshie Hills. He wasn't appropriately dressed, so he was left behind during a training exercise, and when the team went back to see him the following day in daylight hours, he was no longer. So this is somewhere where we hold our can you see, remembrance service every year. We have a lady called Isabelle Marley that looks after these graves. I'll show you a picture of her later and also a video of her too. So that her family, and she's been looking after the graves of these soldiers for over 70 years. She's given that kind of commitment to be looking after them. And nowadays they're looked after by the Commonwealth Graves Commission. And you can see she's tended to these plants. She's planted them. She's looked after this kind of area. And it's only these front 2 rows and the 3rd row where the grave is that's the case. The rest of the graves don't have anything like this. So she's really looked after them. There's a nice picture of Isabelle. Last year she was awarded the British Empire Medal. She lives in Canusie. She's about 99 now, I think 98 or 99 years old. And she's been really looking after the graves, and she talks of these soldiers very fondly and calls them her boys. And her reason for it is, she says, they came over here from home and gave their lives for us. So it's only right that we should remember them. So I think, Steve, if you're okay, we can show the video then for, can you see, for Isabelle Marley, please.
Isabelle Marley. She's a very special person. We're so privileged that she could come along with her family. She's 95, if I'm correct, and she's a member of the British Legion in Scotland. She's certainly a member of the British Legion who fulfills the motto that they have, which is service before self. And she has tended to the graves of these 9 young men buried in Canusie Cemetery in Force K6 for over 60 years.
Their families were far away and they were far from home. And I didn't want the families at home to think their boys were forgotten. Because my brother is buried in Belgium. And the people of Belgium look after his grief. It's only right that somebody around here should look after the Indian boys.
Because you have given the most service to these lads. This is for you.
I never thought this day would, I never even dreamt this day would happen, because I don't need thank you. I was happy to do it for the boys, far from home. It's marvellous that all the lads down at the cemetery are remembered, officially as well as privately, and to let the family know that they're not forgotten.
Okay, what an amazing story then for Isabelle Marley. Such a selfless, caring, amazing woman. I mean, even just to think about her gives me the chills. And I've met her several times during our remembrance service that we have every year in Canusie. And her family are just amazing as well. She's now given that responsibility to her granddaughter to look after the graves. And in fact, there is a podcast. If you go to the Colourful Heritage website and under our resources section, you'll see a podcast for Force K6, and you'll be able to listen to a lot more stories, including her granddaughter, and the kind of person that Isabelle has always been. She's been a very kind, loving, caring person. But as a single mum, she brought up her family. She worked in the Wrens. She was involved in a lot of work on a motorbike. So she would be passing messages, during World War II, and she would have to keep her lights down and drive around the Highlands. So she's quite an amazing, exceptional person, very kind, very generous, very loving, and to look after graves of people that she doesn't know. I'm not even sure that she even met any of the soldiers, but she took this upon herself, and she did this very quietly, very humbly for the last 70 years. And every year she still goes and pays her respects. She lays a wreath down, she puts down her poppy, and she looks after the area. And her family's involved in this as well. So truly amazing women. So what I wanted to highlight next was that I know Duncan's touched upon this, but again, on our website, if you go to the school section, you'll find that we've got these amazing resources, this digital schools resource pack, and the story of Force K6 is within Unit 2, and there's a little bit more information about Isabelle Harling. And we had actually a group of children that, you know, very lovingly wrote a letter to her that I did pass on. So it was a whole class of children that wanted to thank her. So that was one of the activities that they took up on, and they thanked her for her kindness, for her warm, caring nature in looking after these soldiers. So there's a whole load of these booklets, and I've shown many of the pictures already within the talk. So if any teachers or any educationalists are out there and they'd like to have a look, just download them for free, and you can get in touch with me and the website, through the website as well, by email. So bearing in mind that, you know, we have this connection with the British IndoPak Army, there isn't actually, Scotland itself doesn't have a single memorial to commemorate the sacrifice of these soldiers, these sort of servicemen and women during both the World Wars. So Colourful Heritage and partners are looking to build Scotland's first memorial to commemorate all the different, you know, the different faith groups, the different ethnicities that fought so bravely for Britain during World War I and II. So this permanent memorial in Glasgow will help to serve as a reminder for our future generations, for our younger children, to help them to remember the contribution and sacrifice that our forefathers, that these forgotten South Asian soldiers, in fact, have made. So it shows children from different backgrounds and faiths that they too have a stake in this country. And of course, that we have a shared history, we have a joint history. South Asian history is British history, they both go hand in hand. So what we did was we've got 3 parameters that we wanted a memorial to represent. So the first one is diversity. We want it to be inclusive, we want it to include everybody, all the different faiths. We also want it to represent a special link. So we want that link between Scotland and Force K6. Want that to be shown. And we also want to, we want to thank Isabelle Harling by highlighting her selfless commitment, you know, and the sort of respect and selfless commitment that she has. That's, you know, she just epitomizes that, especially looking after these graves. So what these kind of 3 elements to be really as a focal point, as a center point for our memorial. So what we've done last year, oops, sorry, we actually wrote out to a few schools to try and get them involved in the project. So to educate them about the British Indian Army. They downloaded our booklets, and then we had talks arranged for them. And we asked children to design what they thought a memorial should look like with these 3 parameters in mind. And we got back nearly 105 entries from a variety of children, you know, from primary school to high school ages to youth groups. And you can just see that's just a really small sample of the kind of designs that came back to us of what they learned. So this was something we could have done on our own. We could have just, Colourful Heritage could have just by themselves taken this and decided, right, we're going to build this memorial and that's it. But we wanted the community to get involved. We had a social media campaign. We asked various faith groups and we asked children, we asked the youth. So what we've done now is we managed to narrow down and really pick out the various elements from the different designs that the children had sent and come up with one kind of one main design, and that covers pretty much everything that has been asked of us from the various faith groups. And we've now given that design in towards planning permission to the architect. So to find out more about our memorial, if you go to our webpage and click on the BIA memorial section, there's a lot of detail in there. There's a lot of videos, there's a lot of articles. You can see some of the other pictures as well that children have sent in, and you can keep up to date on our social medias as well. So one of the locations that we are considering, or that we've been given as a proposed site, is Kelvin Grove Art Galleries. You can see this grand building here in red sandstone. And this, in fact, is the home of one of the pictures by Henry Lamb of driver Abdul Ghani, who's one of the drivers for Force K6. So it has a strong connection with Force K6 already. So on the grounds of it, just to the left here in the front, there's an area here that we've kind of got earmarked for this memorial that we're looking to build. So I'd like to take the opportunity now just to thank everyone for listening and for listening to the talk and seeing the slides. And of course, this is our email address. If you write into this, I'll be able to pick that up. You can see more on our website as well. And follow us on social media. So I hope you've enjoyed this talk and you've learned some really interesting sort of nuggets of information about Scotland and our link to heritage within the South Asian community. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. We are still taking questions, Q&As, and we will respond to as many as we can. But all that remains now is for me to do the closing remarks. So in closing, I would like to thank our chief guest, Duncan Dornan from Glasgow Museums, of course, my colleague Saqib Razzaq and Kesha Shiraz and the team at MACFEST for this informative and eye-opening historical accounts of the sacrifices and contributions of Muslims and indeed the South Asians from all from all walks of life, from all caste and creed to Scotland. Their sacrifices, their hopes, their aspirations have truly made this country colourful in its culture and rich in its diversity. And we are forever immensely grateful. So finally, on behalf of Duncan, Saqib, and all the Colourful Heritage team, I'd like to thank you, the MACFEST team, Kesra, and for this inspiring platform, and wish MACFEST 2022 all the success now and in the future.
Thank you so much, Brother Shahid, for wonderful wishes and for amazing hosting yourself. And Saqib, what can I say? What a lovely way to present it. And the work you're doing is absolutely amazing, incredible. I've learned so much. And it's been very poignant watching those videos again, especially about this wonderful lady, Isabelle. So we will post this recording on our MACFEST YouTube channel so people can watch it in their own time. Just a reminder, we have two amazing panels again. First thing in the morning, 12 o'clock, we've got this wonderful lady from the British Museum, and what a feast she's going to offer you. I was over the moon when I saw some of the slides, so please join us for that. And then in the afternoon, after 3 o'clock, we have Islamophobia with amazing international panelists from USA, from Germany, from here, and you will enjoy it. So please do book if you haven't. If you know us, we will provide you the link. And thank you so much for giving us your time. I know you're in Jakarta, I know you're in New York, I know you're in Scotland, I know you're in Yorkshire, you're everywhere. So thank you for all of us for giving us your wonderful Saturday. And thank you to our amazing presenter. And thank you, Duncan, for also being our chief guest for this event. Many thanks again. Goodbye and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Alaikum.